he was just like, you know what, give me that one.
Yeah, he's been telling me he's wanted to give it a shot. Definitely, it looks like both players are going to take a mulligan, given that both decks are kind of combo decks.
So, obviously we know what the Devotion deck is kind of trying to do. We talked about it a little bit before break, so why don't we start with Duncan's side here. I mean, we've seen the deck a couple of times on stream already, so why don't you just refresh some people as to what he might be trying to do, because so far we've seen it do a couple of different things.
Yeah, so there's kind of the main combo game plan of just tap a bunch of dwarves, which are typically Magda, but then once you get your Maskwood Nexus in play, everything's a dwarf, so you can tap everything, and then everything in your deck is a dragon, so you can search for anything. And then I forget what card it is that you fling at your opponent to deal like a bunch of damage, but you get to do that.
Yeah, it's the Dominaria United uncommon, where it's like power and toughness equal the number of creatures you control, and you fling it with Ziatora from Streets of New Capenna. The deck's pretty sweet when it actually pops off, and even when it doesn't pop off, it's just a really good mid-range deck.
Oh yeah, it's perfectly fine otherwise. Looks like we're going to have, I think this is going to be one of Brian's most explosive starts. So you're going to have, this is actually an interesting decision. We have, we don't have a second land drop, but we do have a Sylvan Scrying in hand. And it looks like we're just going to deploy a bunch of elves, knowing
Duncan, that's a lot of elves.
Yeah, one of the nice things is that this deck isn't really playing a lot of interaction, both sides, so we can trust the elves to live a bit longer. And now the play pattern probably is going to be Sylvan Scrying for Nykthos, and then tap Nykthos for 3 mana to play a Troll to be able to put even more board pressure. A bit of a slower start on the side of the Nykthos deck, especially with a 1-lander, but this is a very nice 1-lander.
Yes, we do have the Sylvan Scrying coming out. Probably going to wind up finding that Nykthos will come into play, and right now will be generating equal devotion. However, that is still 3 devotion, which means that Troll we saw in Brian's hand is probably coming down.
Yeah, and then that means the next turn is just going to be big mana, and worst comes to worst, it's just going to be a massive lair coming in. But we also see an invasion and a Storm the Festival, so we're storming next turn, probably.
We got plans for that Storm the Festival. So just untapping here as the turn passes back over to Duncan. With only 2 lands in play, we do see at least 2 more in hand. But Duncan's deck does need a little bit of time to set up, whereas you said with this explosive start from the mono green deck, Brian's looking like he's sitting pretty here. And he even pulled over the mana token that we prepared. He knows what's about to happen.
Yeah, and they actually left it out for him to use. I'm like, I'm going to still hold that over y'all, keeping the mana tokens in the back when else.
I didn't even know we had them until Kyle pointed it out. So we got the forest mana token here. It looks like Duncan, however, is going to play. Oh, this is the restoration of a gun.
Yeah, so first chapter is searching for planes, put it in hand. Second chapter, you can discard a card. If you do, you return a card from your graveyard, mana value 2 to play.
Yep.
Wow, I remember the card. The backside is also just a big blocker.
Yeah, backside is a big boy that I believe creates tokens as well when attacking and blocking. Yeah, it's kind of like the I am going to hate myself for forgetting the Theros cat. Brimaz. Yeah. Sort of the Brimaz effect, only it's going to be creating spirits, so this can potentially get out of hand, and we do have some shenanigans that can happen with lands.
It looks like we did hit a land drop, which is good. So this is going to be nice for Nykthos to be able to start going off. We have 6 mana to start here, and we're going to have 2 from the elves, which is really nice. So we have a Storm with the possibility of, if we hit Nykthos, being able to storm probably even farther and continue to play additional spells and continue going. We have the Invasion in hand as a guaranteed second follow-up if we don't hit anything that gives us more mana. But it looks like we have a Storm and a second. Oh, okay, so this is going to be... Seeing what Brian's picked, this is probably going to be... Okay. All right, it looks like he's opting to do Troll and Cav.
Okay.
Again, I think this is Brian's first time playing Devotion. For me personally, I would have probably taken the Nykthos and the Cav, made mana right away with the Nykthos, and then hoped to hit a third Nykthos. But it looks like here we did hit a Forest and a Temple Garden, which isn't bad. Temple Garden is going to fix our mana since we don't have our Leyline in play for the one of Elishnorn to be able to be played from hand, which is really nice. And probably the damage isn't going to matter too much, so shocking it in isn't terrible. But I can also just see clean go with a forest because it's something that can't really be removed. One of the worst feelings is a Field of Ruin hitting your Temple Garden that has a troll on it.
Oh, that's a little unlucky. But Brian looks like is opting to take the Temple Garden after all. So as you mentioned, by not taking that Nykthos, Brian can still use the Forest as a land drop that he has in hand. But that Nykthos would have potentially generated what? We would have had an additional
It would have been
9
additional.
mana?
It would have been additional 3. So yeah, we would have made 9 mana. So with the land drop from hand, you would have been able to storm again from the graveyard.
So it looks like we are going to wind up just seeing a couple of mana being floated and just the invasion getting cast here. So Brian potentially just setting up to go off next turn with the storm in the graveyard and maybe a couple of something else coming out here. Maybe even searching for like a Kiora to put into play to keep going.
Yeah, it looks like just taking a peek. This looks like a pretty weak invasion. We had a few lands come up, an elf and a storm the festival. Again, backseat playing my own deck.
You're the color commentator. You're allowed to do that.
Yeah,
so.
I would probably take the Massagedu here because it is a spell, basically, that can maybe hit a hate piece. Again, I don't know if Brian knows this, but the main combo piece being the Maskwood Nexus, being able to have the Massagedu in hand as a threat to always remove it is going to be very helpful. But yeah.
You see Invasion of Ixalan, unfortunately, not able to turn that one around for everybody, but we did see Duncan reading it, so just letting everybody know this is basically a 2-mana better version of Oath of Nissa, because you can put basically any permanent into your hand as opposed to land, enchantment, or creature. So we see the invasion.
Looks like the invasion is getting flipped over to the backside, so this is going to be a 4/3 Trampler that can become indestructible when you cast a spell. It's, a very, very good attacker, because usually with the way this deck operates, you want to cast your spells before combat because you never know if you can get that pop-off turn that can get you the win. So it's perfect. The Regisaur is always going to be a great attacker for you.
Most importantly, Scryfall flips this one for us, so we're able to read it normal. We don't have to turn our heads. But looks like we are just going to discard Amara and immediately put Amara into play. So Amara Soul the Accord is what is popping up over here. So unfortunately, this is going to be entering tap. It's not going to be becoming tap, so we're not going to wind up getting the token for that.
Yeah, but either way, this is a great way to just go ahead and get one of your main engines online, and you're doing it for free too. So you still have the rest of your 3 mana to do something with, and you had that Plains land drop for turn, as you see. And it's we have 4 mana, and we have the Sentinel, so any creature represents a 5th mana as well, which is really nice. If it's a Magda, you have 6. There's a lot of really nice play patterns that Duncan can have, depending on what he does have in hand.
And we may see a couple of different play patterns come out from Duncan, but the big kind of question here is, what does he have to potentially stop Brian from just winning next turn? Is this an Arlen?
Yeah, Arlen Soul of the Accord, the day-night Planeswalker. Oh boy.
Oh man, this is going to be extremely interesting, especially since we have to keep track of day-night now, which is every Pioneer player's favorite mechanic.
Yes, and it looks like we have first decided to make 2 wolves to start, and oh yes. One of the coolest things about this walker is that the plus lets you be able to basically turn on Night in a heavy creature deck because it lets you just cast everything on your opponent's turn, which is super sick. And yeah, we have a lot of bodies on board, so it's going to make it a lot harder for Brian to try and get in big damage this turn. But we currently have, just doing a quick math, we have 12 Devotion.
7, 10, 13.
A lot of devotion.
Yes.
It's enough to cast Storm the Festival.
He counts the other side.
Yeah. It looks like I'm actually going to go check in with Brian because technically it doesn't count the Regisaur. It's no longer has the pip on the front. So, yeah, we're going to start by floating the mana, and I believe it's going to be one of the storms from the graveyard, so we're going to go down to the... Technically it should be 2, but we're going to get 3. Yeah, so let's continue seeing what we got, and...
this is probably going to be looking for Kiora to untap that Nykthos, make a bunch more mana. We have some late lines of the Guild Pack. We're a little bit late to the party here. We do have a Cavalier of Thorns, though, so that could potentially find us another Nykthos. We see Frenchie just letting him know that does not count the flip side of the invasion. And so Brian still has a lot of mana available, though. 2 mana just floating there. We wind up finding Cavalier, which can find us another Nykthos. We wind up having some ley line to the guild packs. We have additional invasions that could wind up coming down to kind of dig us even deeper to find that Kiora to cast, because we have plenty of mana left over.
Yeah, I missed the draw step too, so I don't know exactly what we have in hand, but I mean, for me personally, this is probably the correct decision. You now have two different permanents that came into play that can find you that second Nykthos to be able to continue going.
So let's see here. Cavalier is going to wind up being first.
All right.
Oh, the Kiora was there. Double Kiora was there. And a Sunken Citadel.
Okay, the Citadel's a decent hit because now Citadel on its own can power up Nykthos, so it's gonna, help boost your mana. This is always an interesting choice. Some folks decide to name white here to be able to help cast your Elishnorn, but it looks like Brian did decide to name green.
Yep. Oh, and there's the Elishnorn, which we
Yes.
do have the Temple Garden for that we took off of the earlier Cavalier, so that's pretty solid. Also, Outcaster Trailblazer in the hand, which could be that kind of card draw engine that we've been missing this whole time, which if you look at Brian's battlefield, though, he really hasn't been missing it.
I don't think we need as much of a card draw engine. This is definitely the point in the game when you are digging for your oddity to be able to just go off and win. Interestingly enough, I actually think Elishnorn is great into the deck that Token is playing because he does have a reasonable amount of BTBs here.
Yep, I was going to say the Elishnorn is probably the take here just to shut off what Duncan is going to do. Duncan is going to get an untap step before that Elishnorn can come down, so maybe Brian just looking at something he could throw on the battlefield now. Of course, there is still the viable plan of attacking this turn because Brian has a decent amount of damage, although not quite lethal right now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And if we are using those casts for chump blockers, that might not be the best thing for Duncan, but it could also be the thing that keeps him alive. And I feel like we're definitely blocking the Cav that can attack this turn. And we do still have 5 mana. Unfortunately, none of it is white, but we do have 5 mana available to us.
Yeah, so potentially just a little bit of a awkward tap here for Brian, although, of course, as you mentioned, one of his first times piloting a deck, and how often do you think you're going to find the one of Elishnorn when you started with one land in general? So we do see it looks like we're going to combat, so we get a bunch of swings coming in. So it looks like both trolls and that flipped invasion, the dinosaur coming on in. Everything basically that has trample is going to be coming in because that's unfavorable blocks for Duncan across the board.
Yeah, and just really easily sending in the Cav at the invasion to be able to get another 4-power creature on board. We might have milled another storm, not 100% sure.
It looks like
we did. Yeah, so next turn we do represent another Storm the Festival. And especially with the Cavalier, if we do end up killing the Cavalier for some reason, we're going to be putting a Storm, a Kiora, just something on top that's going to do a lot of damage. And we still have that face-up Beseiju for any shenanigans that might come in from Duncan.
So we're going to see here, and Brian does have plenty of mana on tap with those 3 elves on the top side of your screen to Beseiju at will if Duncan is going to be trying to go off next turn. We mentioned that the Naya Tokens deck needs a Maskwood Nexus in order to go off, so Beseiju completely shutting that one down. It looks like we do have a couple of blocks there. Oh, looks like some of the creatures were swinging in at Arlen, so maybe just chump blocking to reduce the amount of damage that Duncan was going to be taking, but still winds up taking 4 at the end of the day, and I believe it was actually
we were saving the invasion. We did not want it to get taken off the board and become yet another attacker because remember, we have a lot of power on board here.
I'll play out the Elishnorn.
Oh, and we had Temple Garden in hand, so
it's we knew better than, or Brian knew better than us. So yeah, this is a great place to be in. Now every single ETB is going to be doubled for Brian, and every and every ETB for Duncan is going to be canceled. And this is all enters effects, not just creature effects, like a Torque Orb or something like that. So this can really do a lot depending on which ETB effects Duncan is trying to put into play.
Side note though, Duncan's deck does kind of just want to turn things sideways. So if we have a Magda or we have something like that, that would be unaffected by the Elishorn Mother Machines. However, if we have any sort of Tulsamir effects, which we know that Duncan has in his list, at least one Tulsamir, that's going to be shut off entirely. Although most of the things on Brian's side will survive that anyway. We actually see Duncan getting aggressive here, just tapping everything and swinging sideways.
Ooh, this is good. I think it kind of sounds like Duncan's really valuing just getting more permanents into play. Again, additional blockers. We do have a lot of tramplers, but those calves, the biggest creatures on board, they don't have trample. They just have reach.
So we're getting a couple of 1/1s, and it looks like Brian just deciding doesn't want any sort of shenanigans coming in here. So just going to be taking 8 damage here. Doesn't even need to. Doesn't even want to attempt to block with the Cavalier or the Elishorn and risk losing those very powerful creatures.
And I believe we are in Night because we haven't cast a spell.
I don't think we did. So yeah, we should be at nighttime. Yeah, there we go.
There we go. They catch it.
All right.
Yeah.
So any future Arlens will come into play on the werewolf side. Maybe I forget the disenchant one. That's the only one I've ever really played with besides Graveyard Trespasser.
Yeah. It looks like Brian is currently making 16 mana with the Nykthos, or just trying to figure out what he wants to do specifically. Okay, now he's going to make 17 mana by adding an elf first.
And then only need to tap one thanks to that Sunken Citadel, as you pointed out earlier. So we do wind up having quick little counts here.
17?
Yep. 17 mana winds up being put into mana pool here. And we do wind up seeing, we know there's a Storm the Festival in Graveyard. There's one card left in Brian's hand, so depending on what that is, if this Storm the Festival finds a Kiora, we could just be completely just on board going off. We could see the Uvenwald Oddity, which is probably good game at this point.
Yeah, Oddity here wins you the game because you have enough mana to still tap it, and then you're going to probably dump the rest of your mana into a big lair. And it looks like we found I think your hits. This is a pretty weak Storm, but you do find a Surveil land, which you can just nut something into the graveyard, which is pretty sick. And you also have a Outcast Trailblazer coming in, which does double trigger.
It
does?
I'll add 2 mana to my mana pool. Okay.
Looks like Brian opting not to put another land into play. Maybe missing that from the Storm the Festival on the part of this permanent entirely. But we do get an Outcaster Trailblazer, like you said. It's going to be triggering twice. We still get 2 additional mana. And that last card in Brian's hand is actually the Beseju that he took from before.
Yeah.
So,
so from here, I'm thinking we're probably just using the rest of the floating mana to... Oh, looks like we aren't pumping up the lair.
Looks like Brian just decided, I'm going to turn everything else sideways here. So the mana in the mana pool will go away since we're moving to combat. But it's still 4, 8, 12 trample damage, an additional 5 from this Cavalier. So 12 of it will probably wind up going through 11 minimum if we block with one of the 1/1s. So Duncan does still have to kind of trade away some of his remaining creatures. So that flipped a restoration of a Gonjo probably going to have to die here in order to not die.
Yeah, and unfortunately 12 damage is trample damage, so that's not getting... there we go. Before blocks, we are going to Beseju the biggest blocker. So effectively, we can think of Duncan at 17 life because he does have the lifelinker. So he is going to have to chump block with both of his creatures that are untapped and chump block both of them on a Cav, and he will be at 5. And I think Brian just looked and was like, "Oh shoot, I have a lair in play."
Yeah,
I could have dumped that 8 mana into that.
Yeah, he just topped up for mana there. Yeah. So it looks like Beseju coming down. We saw Architect of Restoration, since it is a Flip Saga, it is still an enchantment, so that will wind up biting the dust here. Duncan does have 5 untapped mana and plenty of cards in hand though. So let's see if there's any sort of response here from him.
Yeah. Yeah, and while yes, I am backseat piloting the deck, Brian's doing honestly a really good job for his first time ever touching this deck, like being able to understand going through lines and trying to layer the triggers in the right moments too, because sometimes you want to do cap triggers first, other times you want to do the invasion triggers. So, like, again, this is a very complex deck that requires a lot of pilot knowledge and comfort. So putting him on stream is a bit rough, but happy that he's honestly putting on a good show and just showing how much pure power he can put into play.
Yeah, my brain usually just goes, haha, devotion, go burr, and I don't normally think about these things, but Brian doing a very good job of navigating most of the lines. We did see just maybe one or two little mishaps, but from a one-land hand to
One lander, yes.
commanding position in this game is we are going to see a Wandering Emperor be flashed in.
Go!
All right, this is not something I had seen in Duncan's list before, but this is definitely going to give us a little bit of a speed bump for Brian's side.
Oh yeah, this is huge. So we are going to exile the troll, which is huge, gain a couple life, which is also huge, and now we definitely don't have much of a lethal attack. Yeah, it sounds like he's saying he's taking a total of 13.
Yeah, I'd say we didn't see the other Cavalier it was swinging in since it was by the invasion, but it was actually going at Duncan's face. So Duncan is going to want to go down to 5 off of this attack, so potentially going to be dead next turn, but now Duncan has the kind of free reign. Brian, no cards in hand, no Beseiju. We could just see the Naya combo deck do its thing.
Yeah, when we unfortunately haven't gotten the best glimpse of Brian's handle or of Duncan's handle game, so we really don't know what he's got cooking. I see another Jaspera Sentinel, but I don't know if there's any of those big like Magdas or other big payoffs. Like the Wandering Emperor, by all means, great card to bring in because you gained a little bit of life, you killed a block, killed an attacker, all that stuff, but might be a little too late.
And Duncan just kind of surveilling the battlefield here, seeing, is there a way that he can live? Is there a way that he can win? Is another question. But it looks like with just only knowledge of one of those cards in hand, there are 2 more that I can't quite make out. One looks like it is an Aftermath card, so it could potentially be a second Arlen. But we are going to have Wandering Emperor being cashed in for tokens. We just got a quick little 2/2 Samurai coming into play.
Makes sense.
I mean, at this point, don't know what the last card in Duncan's hand could be that would completely turn this around. I mean, Sunfall, but we probably would have had that before.
Yeah, Sunfall would have been last turn, probably.
Okay, so let's say just Despair Sentinel's going to hit the battlefield, so just putting up a bunch of blockers here. I mean, Amara could get into the red zone and still wind up having another lifelinker be made, but at this point in time, having a 2/2 swing in is probably just going to get gobbled up by one of these giant wall of creatures on Brian's side.
Yep. And given that we're kind of face up, we don't have a storm in the graveyard. It's just whatever card we draw. So we're honestly just making a really big layer and attacking, which is a pretty typical turn at this point of the game. You know, sometimes you just have a big creature and just decide to go in.
9,
Time to do math.
11, 12, 13, 14.
14 devotion going to be coming across because we did lose 3 from the troll. So that's going to wind up being 14 devotion coming in, which means this is going to be a 13 layer of the Hydra alongside all these big beaters from Brian's side. And I think we're seeing just going to be a turn sideways here.
Yeah, this is just going to be Smash, which, unless we have another Emperor in hand. Actually, oh yeah, we do have 2 white, at least. So, but I think Brian's also playing slightly conservative here, leaving the elves back. I really like that thinking. But I would be... Okay, and it does look like the Elesh Norn is going to be getting in, given it's got 7 toughness and it's pretty hard to kill.
So we got at least 8 from the creatures on the top that unfortunately have been glared out a little bit by the range of the camera. So we have at least 18 from those in the Cavalier.
It's a big attack for just, 35, 36, 37, 38.
Oh, Brian just
39.
sending everything. Oh, no, okay.
Oh, just kidding.
Yeah.
Siding against the elves. Yeah, so it's going to be an attack for 35, including, I believe, 8 of it is trample.
Yeah, say maybe making sure we don't want to get rid of all of our devotion and our engine here if there's maybe a simple record or something from Duncan's side. But as you mentioned, there's going to be at least 8 of it being trample damage. Unfortunately, the Lair of the Hydra not trampler. A big significant thing to note here is the biggest power creature is not going to be trampling over. And Duncan lining up blocks against the tramplers, so maybe has something in his hand that can keep him alive.
Yeah, so right now I believe we saw that Duncan has 4, 6, 8, I think it's 10, 9 or 10 creatures.
Yeah. Oh, Duncan was just moving the daybound token off to the side,
Oh,
which is
okay,
not
okay.
a blocker. So
Okay.
yeah, we have 2
okay, so
Despair
it's-
Sentinels. So
Yeah, it looks like it's only 6 creatures. So given that we are attacking with 6 creatures ourselves, that means that we can live.
We can
Don't
live.
get me wrong, but we are living at 1.
yeah, as I say, if we block like this, there's 1 trample damage coming over. We may wind up having, maybe we tap a Dispara Sentinel, make a 1/1, but that leaves us with 1 less blocker. So it looks like it's going to be like after blockers get assigned before damage type thing to just keep something around for next turn. But yeah, I don't like Duncan can survive, but
Actually, I think it'll
probably
be
no
at
board.
I think it'll be at 2
Yeah.
because the lifelinker is going to give him an additional life at least. But what's nice is he'll also probably use the non-summoning sentinel to tap 2 creatures, which will then help out with making an additional blockers and all that stuff.
Oh, he's triple blocking Elishnorn. Okay, so yeah, Brian's just like, well, you're gonna die to that Lair of the Hydra if you do that. So let's say Duncan may be blocking a little bit differently here, and by that triple blocking of Elishnorn makes me think that whatever Duncan has in hand is completely shot off by that card.
Most likely, this is. I think Duncan is trying to not just survive, but also put himself in a position to win on the following turn, which is kind of what you need to do at this point. Like surviving is not going to do anything.
I'd be
There's
impressed if
so
that could
much
happen,
power. There's just too much power on board for him to really handle. So
If I do like that, I through.
yeah.
Let's say Duncan
Yeah,
thinking
he's
out
doing the
loud.
math. He's going to live at 2 because he's going to let 4 through. He's going to soak up the other trampler and chump everything else.
That's what it looks like here. So at least 4 trample damage coming through, and oh, we got mana being tapped.
Add 5 mana.
We are
5
adding
mana.
5, so this is going to be spicy.
Alright.
We do have a 1/1 coming in, which is also cool.
Hold command. Can I do this real quick?
More hold command. All right, I'm a reader on this one. What is going on here? Is this making things indestructible?
Definitely. It's also going to gain him 3 life, probably, and deal 3 damage to something.
Ooh, Outcast to Trailblazers the target. So okay,
Um,
we
damage
did not
happens?
anticipate this happening.
That bounces off.
Oh,
that
goodness.
bounces
Gain 1 life from here too.
2
Right?
life.
Yeah.
This is +1.
Oh, right, 2. And then
Yeah, so we are
I'll
going
take
up to
the
2.
four,
We're
so
taking
you take
10,
two.
so
You take
we're
two.
down to
I'll take
6.
We're down to 6.
All right, so I didn't think that going into this turn that Duncan was going to not only survive this attack but gain 1 life off of it.
Yeah, this is... What a card. That was impressive.
Yeah, all right.
And, you know? So the other thing is that not a single creature on board died.
Actually, not.
Yeah,
The
so
board is still the same, and what's nice is that Brian did leave back enough other creatures to still block, which is pretty solid.
yeah, I mean that would have been very dangerous if we wound up having all these elves coming in as well, because Duncan would have been at 2 and then untapping with what maybe have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, it would have only been 9 damage. You would have been 1 short of killing
Yep.
him on the crackback. Although
Yep.
if there is that other, if there's an Arlen cord in hand, that may have been a bit of a factor, but. Looks like Duncan just drawing here another Dispara Sentinel. So Duncan's surviving this turn, but okay, there was an extra token being made, so we
Yep.
would have had lethal.
Yeah.
4 mana.
Arlen.
We
We
got another
do.
Arlen.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, Arlen, leader of the pack, not Arlen.
Arlen, leader of the yeah, I think Soul of the Accord is. Oh no, Amara Soul of the. Why are they
We have
all? Why do they
Accords,
all-
we have Arlens, we
Voice
have
of the Pack.
Amaras.
That's
yeah.
There's so many planeswalkers.
All right, so Arlen going to be coming down. Looks like we got some more cat being made, but we don't have another lore hold command in hand, so I don't know if that's going to be enough to keep Duncan alive here.
Yeah. Well, we only have one trampler left. So it's actually we're kind of at the point in the game where green stalled, and so it's kind of up to the top decks. And the only top deck that really saves us right now is, honestly, it's going to be another storm.
And we've already used two.
Yeah, so
We've had 2 invasions as well.
yeah, and I know we saw a storm or two off of those invasions. So they're probably on the bottom of the deck. Granted, we've gone through a lot of our deck already, so
Yep.
there might be a chance they're coming up. However, we haven't at all in any of the spells, even the invasions, we haven't seen our good friend the Uvenwald Oddity that
No, we
will
have
instant
not.
win the game. So if that's the top deck, I mean, you know, that's a great top deck. True
Yeah.
heart of the cards right there. But other than that, it's either going to be another Cav or the Uvenwald Oddity. And is Duncan attacking?
Duncan's getting aggressive. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 damage coming. So this is going to force a block somewhere. So 10 damage coming across, but I think this just leaves Duncan dead on the crackback. It looks like he has 3 creatures that can attack this turn that are down on the bottom side of the screen, but that gets dangerous if Brian decides to swing in with these elves too. That might just be lethal right there.
Yeah, this is actually one of those weird spots where you're probably throwing in a trade, having your elves trade with some of the creatures. Because they're just 1/1s at this point. They're not doing that much. And I like putting them in front of the vigilant creature.
Yep. Getting rid of a blocker.
Yep, exactly.
Alright, so we did want to getting a 1/1 lifelink soldier from the Amara. So okay, so at this point, Duncan's going to go up to an effective 8 here from those 2 lifelinkers on the bottom part of the screen. We have 1 trampler, which is at least 4 damage. So we can assume he's at an effective 4 life here. Do we have enough blockers left on his side in order to survive?
So it looks like we have 1 blocker. And do we have any cards in hand?
There's no cards left in hand. We have an Arlen on 1, and we have 4 blockers still. We had the 2 cats that came in from Arlen this turn. We had the Jasperis that we played, and the
That's
token
rough.
we made.
Okay, so Brian's most recent top decks were 2 ley lines, which are not really where you want to be at this point. You're trying to close, but you can't really find it. We have currently 4 blockers, so we do have enough to stave off the attack.
Ooh,
I
this is getting
believe.
spicy.
Interestingly enough, yeah, it's. I'm kind of at a loss here. We are really, at the end of the day, we are just throwing basically spaghetti at the wall and trying to be able to get the kill here. I'm for sure powering up the lair here and just trying to get as much damage in as possible.
So it's only a 9/9 layer now as well if you fire it up, unless you tap everything. Okay, Leyline comes down, so that'll get us back up to 13 devotion.
Yeah.
So 13 devotion makes a 12/12 layer. Could tap elves if we want to, but then it leaves us with no blockers for the crackback. So, all right, we have at least 5 attackers, not counting the elves coming in from Brian's side. 4 of it's going to be trample damage, and then we have 4 blockers left. So we can just eat up all these, like you said, just eat up all these non-trample damage things. We could potentially start thinking about trading against the trample, but the trample will be indestructible. We cast the Leyline this turn, so.
Yeah, and it looks like we are just swinging with the big lair, which forces a block, and the Elishnorn because it has vigilance, and we're now on defense, which is, and might even be trying to kill the Arlen. Interesting. Oh
thinking
yeah,
about
because
it.
we are gonna flip this turn, and so.
We shouldn't flip, right?
Well, no, because we are on daytime, and oh no, yeah,
had
Brian cast the ley line. Yeah.
And this
Which is
Elishnorn is a pretty free attack though, because Duncan can't really take the damage from the lair, and it only leaves 5 power left to block the Elishnorn. So effectively, we're just taking 3 damage here.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, going down to 5 isn't terrible. It does mean that we're just gonna survive any attacks, and both players are in top deck mode. And it looks. Did I see a land?
I don't know.
That's a
it
bit
could be a
rough.
lore hole command for all we know.
Yeah, exactly. There's been some cards we haven't been expecting in the list coming out, which is pretty
I'll
sick.
plus the Arlen.
Sure.
Becomes nighttime. And I'll pass the turn to you, and then it'll become nighttime.
Yep. All right, so we have swapped to Knight, and we have flipped the Arlen,
So can I see the?
and yeah,
Add
it's
2 mana. or
it's
become
I mean it's a 5/5 on Duncan's turn, which is
Ellen type?
a pretty good attacker.
Yeah.
Granted, 5/5 that doesn't really get through a Nelishnorn or a Cavalier.
No, it does not. Maybe if we have a follow-up removal spell. Ooh, is that another Sunken Citadel for Brian, too?
I think that was the Nykthos.
Oh, it was a Nykthos. Okay.
Yeah.
Both of our players are just kind of top-decking lands at this point, so this has made this kind of grindy board state really interesting because now we have the tokens deck without its Amara to generate tokens stalled out. We have Brian's side without his Storm the Festivals kind of stalling out with all these big creatures. So at this point, Brian is technically favored because you basically have the Abyss every turn, forcing Duncan to chump block, but
Yep.
either one of these players rips something good, it could completely flip because there's a collective 9 life left between these two players.
Yeah, and it could go up to 11. We do have a couple lifelinkers here.
I mean, yeah, we
But
do.
I think we're gonna probably end up in the same game plan of make a big lair, attack with big lair, and probably not even attacking with Elishnorn because we do have enough blockers back this time.
Yeah,
And-
I'm just gonna have to pass the turn.
It could also. Ooh,
Passing the turn here.
I like
from
this.
Brian.
Actually, just representing the big lair as another blocker.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so Duncan going to get another turn. We only had one spell cast, though, from Brian, just the second ley line of the guild pack, so Devotion is at an absurd amount again.
Yeah. Devotion is numbers. That's
yeah.
kind of what you can think.
Devotion is lethal at any point from this lair. Looks like we are going to have Arlen going up, so that's going to add just a pair of Gruul mana to our mana pool.
Mm-hmm.
And now Duncan doing some math, so
We have some mana math coming up. That's always fun.
there's no Kessig Wolf Run in this format, right?
I wonder.
That would be an interesting addition, but that is a discussion for another time. Instead,
Well, I mean, even with the Kessig Wolf run, that is going to be a lot of what? Oh, this is some massive.
is this
convoke
March of the
spells.
Multitudes? Yes, it is. All right, let's go.
Oh goodness. So you're gonna have to tell me about this. Oh my lord, that's a lot of lifelinkers.
All right, so we are going to be creating basically mana -3, 1/1 life linking white soldiers, affectionately called March of the Many Dudes, because there are many dudes being put on the battlefield right now.
Yes.
So I believe this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 1
Plus the 2 from Arlen.
No, Arlen created mana this turn.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's
yeah.
1,
Yeah,
2,
the 2 mana from
Yeah,
Arlen.
yeah, I was just counting the last
gotcha,
3
gotcha.
there. So 13 1/1s on the battlefield now. And Brian is potentially looking at him being the one that is facing down lethal damage next turn.
But
I think you
here's the thing. Oh, he
That's it?
Yeah.
It was in the
Default,
Trailblazer,
my,
Brian
thing turned
Scoops.
into,
Yeah, yeah, because the only thing that he
button
really
was
had
not
was attacking the invasion to try and draw additional cards, but we don't have any removal spells in the deck. This, oh boy, this really stalled out, and look at that.
That is not how I expected that matchup to go at all. Brian on a one-lander puts, 14 devotion on the battlefield on turn 4. Duncan blocking with 1/1 lifelinkers long enough to pull out not only Warhold command to
Yep.
survive, but then March of the Multitudes to threaten lethal.
I mean, it's just a wild set of just everything here, and yeah, that's just absolutely crazy.
Hot damn. All right, so YouTube channel favorite Duncan is going to take game 1 over the Devotion deck here from Brian. So, all right, Frenchie, this is your Devotion list. We just saw deck. We
Deck,
saw
yes,
Duncan.
we saw
saw
deck.
Duncan do things with this deck. What are you doing with your sideboard?
Yeah, so honestly, my sideboard here, I'm probably just knowing what we have, the only thing I can really think of bringing in here is probably my tail swipes, and I have 2. Other than that, you kind of can't really dilute the main game plan, and tail swipe is really only to take out combo pieces. Other than that, like, we don't know enough information about what Duncan's trying to do for our Stone Brains to do much. We maybe the Balos if we feel like we're down on life, but I mean, if we're bringing in the Balos, I don't think that's what we want to be doing here.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you have Deafening Silence in your sideboard, which does say very critically non-creature. And we know
Yeah.
that Duncan's list, while we did see 2 very impactful spells being played,
They were never in a row.
They were never in a row, first off. And second off, we know that this is basically a creature combo deck from his side. So I'm assuming now with Brian being on the play, our best sideboard option is to go fast.
Yeah. This is one of those matchups where you sideboard little to nothing. I did also give Brian my usual sideboard guide, and unfortunately, this deck is not in the sideboard.
Yeah, I
guide.
wouldn't expect it to be. I mean, I'd be surprised if it
Yeah.
was.
But yeah, again, I mean, this is the first time piloting for Brian, so definitely going through the motions, trying to figure out what the best decisions to make are, and at least. Yeah, it looks like I was just looking at the hand. It looked great with a lot of 3-drops, but no lands.
All right, so an immediate going down to 6 from Brian. Duncan looks like potentially satisfied with his Evan. And we do need to know that both of those players mulliganed last game.
Yeah, both mulled to 6, so it was still a fair fight, but they weren't at their full strength.
Yeah, as I said, that's probably why we wound up having such a grindy, down-the-wire type of matchup here. Brian did unfortunately see 3 of his 4 Storm the Festivals in the top couple of cards there, one of which we couldn't actually use because it was off an invasion. Duncan, though, we didn't see any combo pieces.
No. Oh, that was a keep, my friend.
All right, so I didn't see the hand, so let me know what
Yeah,
was in it.
so that hand had 7 cards. It only had 1 land again, but it had an elf and it had a Leyline of the Guild Pact and a Sylvan Scrying. So your plan is going to be Leyline, use the land, which is hostile, which is now tapped for green to play your elf. Turn 2, search with your Sylvan Scrying to find Nykthos, and then you're untapping 5 mana on turn 3.
That sounds good.
So, but again,
And you still have 1 extra card in that hand, or 2 extra cards in that hand.
yeah, so, but again, this is first time piloting the deck. It takes a really long time to learn what hands are keeps, what hands are mulls. I've always considered Devotion, especially in this current build, very similar to Tron, where you're mulliganing to try and find a good explosive hand. And once you can't get there, then you're just playing a simple game plan of just trying to find what you need. And I believe this is great. We actually just have a nice simple Trailblazer and a Troll here. Can't complain about that, because now we're going to have the 3 mana that we need to play the Troll, draw additional cards, and all that good stuff.
We have an Amara on the battlefield for Duncan as well, so we're probably going to wind up seeing just a floating mana next turn, or at the end of this turn, in order to just create an additional token. But there you go, over hits the battlefield for Brian, so that's going to trigger the Outcast or Trailblazer, draw us a card, find us another mana that we will eventually need, specifically this Temple Garden here, which will allow Elishnorn on for later turns. And, I mean, at this point, we still have the largest things on the battlefield.
Yep, and the last 2 cards in hand are second Besage, so again, remove something important, which is really nice, and Kiora. So Kiora is going to help us when we find additional big creatures, draw more cards. But until then, it's kind of just, I have a reasonable board, do your worst.
Yeah, pretty much. And Kiora is also just going to, any creature we find is just going to keep us going twice because we have the Trailblazer in play as well. So Brian's got the draw side of his deck coming out here, but now Duncan tapping 4. We get Arlen again. All right, so we just have a pretty solid mid-range curve coming out from Duncan this game.
Yep, nice, clean, easy, good curve, and well, okay, now this is a nice hand. So interestingly enough, this is one of those instances where you are going to Lotus Petal your Beseiju, but you can dump your entire hand out this turn by going Kiora into Trailblazer with playing the additional Beseiju for an additional mana.
Let's see what Brian's play is going to be. Looks like, nope, playing the Kiora out. So there you go, like you said, just going to be able to untap, play an additional land, and then, like you said, play the second Outcast or Trailblazer.
Yep. And I wonder if he values having the Beseiju. Nope, he's going to try and explode out because he is going to be making an additional mana and draw 2 cards here, which is really nice, and you are going to have 12 power on board. And I think that was the third Trailblazer. That's pretty nice.
All right, so Brian has all the pieces of the puzzle to basically pop off as soon as there's a Storm the Festival or something else. Okay, so he is still missing the land to cast a Storm the Festival.
Yeah.
But if you wind up finding Cavalier of Thorns, pop off turn, especially if you hit a land off of that Cavalier. Duncan on the other side, though, is putting up a board state that looks very reminiscent of the Winota decks.
Yeah,
This is tokens galore.
Interestingly enough, I think I saw a Virtue of Loyalty in the hand, which is really good on a go wide deck because it untaps all of your creatures, gives you a 2/2 Vigilant Knight, which is a great blocker, especially into these 2-power Outcaster Trailblazers. And yeah, it can do a lot. So I'm intrigued if I'm correct, because that makes that go wide plan very powerful for Duncan.
And we have the ability to, like you said, since the adventure side of the Virtue is an instant, we have the tick up to the Arlen. We played a Fable Passage. We don't have to do anything this turn if that's the case. We can flip our Arlen, which of course we know makes a 5/5 indestructible. And that also with Trample, that's pretty solid to start putting counters on at the end of your turn.
Absolutely.
All right, so yeah, let's see if that's what Duncan decides to do. It looks like we did crack the Fable Passage immediately, so probably looking at something to play. Maybe a wedding announcement.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we found the Restoration, which we didn't remember to flip when we shuffled our deck. Happens. But, you know, double-sided cards.
I wonder how many of these Invasion of Ixalans on Brian's side are going to be coming into play as creatures that flip over.
Who knows? Yeah.
So now we get
Find
to
a
play.
basic, nice and clean, and we're gonna be able to put in something for free next turn. A lot of his stuff is below 2 mana, so it's really easy.
Yep.
Let's this is really, so we're gonna have 3 draws this turn for Brian. It's gonna be really interesting to see what he has. And in theory, if his next 2 draws are off of this Trailblazer coming in, we're gonna have the 2 mana we need to activate the Nykthos that we draw, and hopefully a Storm Festival. What's up?
This one too, right?
You say Duncan pointing at the Brian should draw
Oh yeah,
three
we're
cards.
drawing three cards. Yeah, we got one more card. Yes.
Unfortunately, Japanese Kiora.
4 power.
So- Brian being a little unfamiliar, draws Kiora land. Not that you want to see, but not worse.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not really going to be doing too much. The redundant Kioras are one of the unfortunate parts of the deck, and I mean, opting to just put in a tap land and passing the turn isn't the worst. Again, this is one of the things that happens with your high roller green deck, that you can sometimes stumble like this. You got all the draw in the world, but you really need creatures to be able to activate that draw. And yep.
There's the Virtue. All right, so we are going to wind up just having Virtue of Loyalty coming into play on the adventure side. So we are going to wind up having, the Ardenvale Fealty, creating a 2/2 white. We did wind up creating a mono with Mara as well, so that wound up putting a 1/1 into play. So now we have a giant board of tokens from Duncan. We are potentially a Maskwood Nexus away from having a good time, or maybe even just wanting to flip over a Virtue.
Honestly, I'm thinking the Virtue is probably the play here. We did get the Plains for sure, so we guaranteed have the 5 mana. We just play it, and then attack and untap all of our stuff to then tap it again.
We also have a wedding announcement in hand too, so we just have a wealth of riches for these pump effects, these lord type effects from Duncan. It does look like the Virtue of Loyalty. Oh no, this is Elish Nord?
No.
Oh, sorry, I said Elspeth. Yeah, sorry. I see EL, and I'm just like, oh, okay. This is something I did not expect from Duncan's deck. I feel like I've said that a bunch of times.
That's a great sideboard card, though, for this matchup in particular.
Just, boom! All power 4 or greater creatures are gone, so now all of a sudden Duncan is just facing down an Elf and a Kiora from Brian's side.
Oh, boy.
This is giving me old standard flashbacks. Usually,
Yeah.
usually this was post Siege Rhino. So.
Oh yeah, good old Siege Rhino.
Ay vey, Elspeth Sun's champion, just a one-sided wrath on this board against Brian. And okay, so Duncan's deck usually has these combos inside of it. I'm just wondering if he changed the deck to take the combo out and just play this mid-range style entirely, or if he just like sideboarded it out this game.
Yeah. You know, I mean, unlike usual, where he usually gives us the deck name as Naya Infinite. This time he gave it as Naya Tokens, so he may have actually fully sideboarded out the combo.
Here we
But
go.
hey, we have cards to draw here. We do have the Trailblazer at least.
It's just gonna concede though.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the Nykthos and doesn't have the
That's-
super mana play. So
Yeah, that would have been rough because we didn't even have that much
Your deck is
devotion,
significantly worse
unfortunately.
without Nykthos.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that first game was grindy as heck, and then that second game was just all the answers from Duncan.